Below is a comprehensive, up-to-the-minute briefing that pulls together the facts, context, and reactions around the two big threads in your headline. Donald Trump's warnings aimed at UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer during his recent UK visit, and actions statements from King Charles that have grabbed headlines. I've combined reporting from major outlets, separated verified fact from clickbait, and added analysis of what this could mean politically and for the country. Key sourcing is cited throughout, so you can check the original reporting. Executive summary: TLDR. During his recent state visit to the UK, President Donald Trump publicly warned Prime Minister Keir Starmer to take much tougher measures on illegal migration, even urging the UK to consider extraordinary steps to stop crossings. This was a blunt, highly public rebuke that fed immediate political debate in Westminster and across the media. The Guardian +1 Starmer and his team responded by emphasizing UK sovereignty and the need to use appropriate land order measures. The meeting highlighted differences over migration, the Middle East, and free speech issues, though both sides sought to underline areas of agreement. Reuters +1 separately. The palace and the king have been front of mind because of royal public duties and his statements following a serious attack in Manchester. The king issued a heartfelt message, and the palace continues to stage official engagements, including Princess Catherine's Kate Middleton, returned to public duties in a role appointed by the king, that have dominated softer news coverage. Some sensational king stuns nation. Headlines are clickbait rather than accurate descriptions of a single dramatic constitutional event. People.com +1. What Trump said: the crucial lines at the tail end of his state visit. President Trump used a press opportunity to press Keir Starmer on migration policy. He warned that unchecked illegal migration could destroy the UK unless the government took very strong action. And he urged Starmer to follow the US approach, including, according to some reports, more forceful measures at the border and even suggesting military support to stop crossings. This blunt public advice from a visiting head of state to a sitting prime minister is politically sensitive because it strays into domestic policy advice and plays to a highly charged public issue in Britain. The Guardian +1. Why this matters. Migration has been a high salience issue in UK politics for years. A US president publicly admonishing the UK PM on the subject elevates it further and hands a potent political soundbite to critics. The Guardian Trump's phrasing, reported by several outlets, was designed to be headline-grabbing and to put Starmer on the back foot, particularly given the Prime Minister's relative newness in office compared with long-running domestic debates on borders. Reuters: Starmer's response and the UK government line. Keir Starmer met Trump as head of government during official talks that covered trade, security, and the Middle East. After the exchange on migration, Starmer stressed British sovereignty, that policy choices are for the UK to make, while also pointing to areas of alignment on international priorities and promising to work with the US where interests align. Reporters noted that both leaders tried to avoid letting disagreements derail the broader state visit, but the migration comments were a clear point of contention. Reuters +1 other items from the meetings. The pair discussed the recent Ukrainian and Gaza crisis, trade friction, and diplomatic ties. The public exchange over migration ended up getting outsized attention, compared with some quieter policy negotiations that also took place. Reuters context: why migration is such a flashpoint in the UK has seen highly visible small boat crossings across the channel in recent years, which has been politically charged and a frequent target of opposition commentary. The issue is not just practical resources, asylum system capacity, but also symbolic about sovereignty and national control. A foreign leader publicly advising a domestic leader on these sensitive measures raises questions about diplomatic norms and political theater. Reporting after the visit made this clear. Trump framed the topic as a warning. UK leaders framed it as a domestic matter. The Guardian: the king. Facts versus hype. There's been lots of sensational wording online. King Charles stuns the nation, which is often used by tabloids and social posts to lure clicks. Here's what verifiable reporting shows. King Charles: public statements after the Manchester attack. The king issued an emotional message following a deadly attack outside a synagogue in Manchester on Yom Kippur, expressing sorrow, support for victims, and gratitude to responders. That kind of public message from the monarch in times of national tragedy is headline-worthy but not unprecedented, and it is an example of the monarch fulfilling the constitutional and symbolic role of national unifier. People.com royal engagements and appointments. Princess Catherine, the Princess of Wales, whose military and public roles were assigned in part by the king as part of the broader royal duties reshuffle, made a high-profile visit to RAF Koningsby that was widely covered. That outing and the king's continuing program of state and diplomatic visits, including an announced Vatican visit, are items of steady royal business, not a constitutional shock. People.com+1. What isn't supported by reputable sources claims that the king has made a sudden constitutional power grab, dramatically reshaped the monarchy, or announced sweeping changes are mostly offered by viral social posts and partisan outlets, and are not substantiated by mainstream reporting. Treat such STUNS nation claims with skepticism. Look instead for palace statements and reporting in established media. Facebook+1 recent security incident and the royal role major. Factor driving recent coverage is the Manchester attack on Yom Kippur, which led to immediate national focus on anti-Semitism, community security, and political unity. The attack spurred a COBRA meeting, the Government Emergency Response Committee, new promises for greater police protection at places of worship, and public statements from leaders across the political spectrum, including the king. This event has put additional pressure on the government to respond decisively to hate crime and to reassure vulnerable communities. Reuters+1 public and political reaction. Short-term impact, domestic politics. Trump's comments handed opposition figures and some broadcasters an easy narrative that Starmer is under external pressure, while his supporters cast the remark as tough, common sense advice. Starmer's staff have tried to minimize the political damage by emphasizing UK control and shared priorities with the US. The Guardian+1 royal optics. The palace has focused on steadying public confidence after bereavements and health scares in recent years by keeping royal engagements steady. The king's public condolence after an attack and carefully staged engagements for working royals like Princess Catherine are intended to show continuity and care, not to shock the nation. People.com+1 spotting disinformation and clickbait. A lot of the STUNS nation wording in social posts is reputable outlets: Reuters, AP, Guardian, BBC. People are reporting concrete facts. The state visit, specific comments by Trump, official palace statements, the Manchester attack, and institutional responses. Viral claims that the king suddenly announced sweeping powers or that the president destroyed the PMR exam. When in doubt, check palace releases or major wire services rather than social shares. AP News+1 what to watch next. Government action on migration. Will Starmer propose or deploy new measures after the publicity of the state visit and domestic pressure? Any policy announcements will be scrutinized for legality and effectiveness. The Guardian security responses after Manchester. Expect increased police deployments and legislative scrutiny on hate crimes and the asylum system as the government aims to reassure communities. The Guardian Palace communications. The palace will likely continue to use carefully worded statements and scheduled engagements. For example, the Vatican visit to manage royal optics. Watch for official statements rather than social media rumors. Catholic News Agency. Bottom line, there are two separate stories conflated in the original sensational headline. The first is a real and politically charged intervention by President Trump during a high-profile visit, where he publicly pressured Prime Minister Keir Starmer on migration policy, a comment that fuels domestic political debate and will be used by opponents and supporters alike. The second is routine but emotionally resonant royal activity and palace statements, including the king's reaction to a national tragedy and the Princess of Wales's public duties, stories that generate large headlines but do not amount to a constitutional shock. The UK in chaos framing overstates both threads. There's intense political contest and a national security incident that demands response. But the mainstream reporting points to a country grappling with crises rather than descending into chaos. The Guardian+2 Reuters+2